Yeah, speaking of which, we do want to bring in Ben White, who is a motorsports journalist and an author who has covered NASCAR for decades. Really extensive coverage looking at history, culture, and just I think there's so many great things I think we're going to learn right now. And Nathaniel, I'd love for you to kick things off with Ben, if you don't mind, since you were the person who made the outreach here.
Sure, and Ben, I hope you can hear me, and it's great to talk with you again. And I know I said this one of the first times I talked to you, but I'm one of the only people who's about 28 years old, but I loved some stuff you wrote in the September 2000 edition of NASCAR Illustrated, right? So great to hear from you, and I'm just wondering, how are you processing this tragic news that we've heard today about Kyle Busch?
Well, it's an honor to be with you all tonight, and I'm under sad under these circumstances. It's very reminiscent to me of the day Dale Earnhardt died, honestly, because we were all just very surprised and shocked, obviously, to hear this news about Kyle Busch. And I think, when news broke today, it was about 4:30, if I'm not mistaken, and I was, again, very, very surprised to hear the news. Talking about Kyle, I would sort of put him in the category of being sort of a Dale Earnhardt, Darrell Waltrip type. When he came in the sport in 2003, he was very, very young at the time. Matter of fact, he wanted to drive at 16, and NASCAR said, no, you got to be a couple years older. And that's how good he was. And I think Jack Roush wanted him earlier than that, said, no, you got to wait a little bit. And he ended up driving for Rick Hendrick. And he was just, even Kurt Busch even said, he's the best guy I've ever seen. You think I'm good, wait till he gets here. And so obviously he took off and did quite well for the early part of his career. Of course, drove for Joe Gibbs and had a couple of championships. And I think the total number of wins that Kyle amassed was like 234, counting Cup Series, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and then the Craftsman Truck Series. It just had this amazing ability to get in a race car and be successul. And it's almost one of those types, like a Bobby Allison, like a Cale Yarborough, those types of the early days. I mean, he could drive a washing machine if they had wheels, those types. Those just felt so comfortable in a race car. And again, I say, today hearing this news was so reminiscent of the day that we lost Dale Earnhardt, and just an incredible superstar as a driver. And it had a massive amount of fans across the country and internationally, really, that just he was so comfortable in a race car. It's just very sad that we've lost him. We got great memories, though. We got great audio and video of Kyle that we'll enjoy for many, many years. And I don't know. We're all, as you said, we're all trying to process it. We're all trying to figure it out. But God has a plan, and that's part of the plan. But we'll process it for quite some time. But it's just very tragic to lose him today.
Awesome, and thank you for sharing that with us, Ben. I know you've covered this sport for so long, and you've been able to see so many drivers' careers from their beginning to their end. What were your first impressions of Kyle Busch? I'm not sure where you were in the early 2000s, like when he was first getting in the Truck Series and everything, and by 2005 when his Cup Series career began. But what were some of your first impressions of him?
Well, first impressions of Kyle was, again, very much like a Darrell Waltrip. I go back to Darrell because he would actually go to Bobby Allison, Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, David Pearson, and say, okay, I'm here and I'm going to beat you on Sunday. And Kyle was very much the same way. He would come in and say, hello, veterans, I'm Kyle Busch and I'm going to win today. And he would go out and do it. And, they respected Kyle, but also made him, he made everybody mad because he actually was that good. He could go out and and take a car and put it in places that it wouldn't fit. And that's where he got the Rowdy nickname, partly because of the Days of Thunder movie, but also because of the fact that he was really fearless. He would stick a car where, like, say at Bristol, or say whether it be Bristol or Talladega or Daytona, he's like, okay, I'm going to win this thing, and I'll do whatever it takes to win. And that's what he did. And he could be brash. He could be, it's man's man kind of thing. I remember there was a press conference in Phoenix one time that, quite honestly, there was a couple of guys who asked him some questions in the media, and he really didn't like the answer, so he put the microphone down and walked out. And NASCAR said, hold the phone. You need to come back and answer these questions, because that's just part of the gig. You got to come back. And they pulled him back in. He was rather young at the time, but over a period of time, he did come back and do some great interviews. And then, as later in his career, he calmed down a bit and gave some great interviews. But I mean, he was very focused on his racing, and he really didn't like to do the interviews because he had his mind set on doing the driving. But yeah, he was very focused on what he wanted to do, and he was obviously very good at it, because he I think the total number was 234 wins total. But he was just like, again, I've said this before, but that's the two drivers that really come to mind. It was a mix between a Dale Earnhardt and a Darrell Waltrip. He had the drive on the track, and then he had the bravado to back it up with sort of like a Darrell Waltrip. And we're all still processing this information. We still don't know exactly what happened, and it'll come out as to what happened there. But sadness, disbelief, those are the types of words that come to my mind. But I loved his smile. I loved his his cockiness, I guess is a good word. He was very confident in what he did, and he went out and proved it and backed it up. And I enjoyed his friendship too. I mean, later in his career, he kind of loosened up a bit and could got a joke a little bit with the media. And he enjoyed, the track. It was called Millbridge, and he would take Brixton there. And one day he said, "Hey, put on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and come over, and you can be one of my pit crew guys, and you could just hang out." And that's how cool it is to come over here and do that. And I was looking forward to doing that. I didn't have the chance to, but I was hoping to find some time in my schedule and his schedule to do it, and unfortunately it didn't work out to do so. But yeah, he was just a great individual, I thought, and a great racer.
Ben, Nick Carboni here in studio. Thank you for joining us. I want to ask you this. We've talked about it all night, that there's a consensus that there's going to be 3 days of racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway despite this tragedy, because that's how NASCAR comes together. We saw it at the Rock in 2001, the week after Dale's death at Daytona. What do you think this weekend of NASCAR racing looks like?
Well, Nick, I think it's going to be a very definite cloud over the 600. I think the fans will unite over this. And, there's something, again, that happened at Rockingham. I'll never forget this. In 2001, we were all there after Daytona, after we lost Dale. But we all united as a family, as crew members, as media members, as fans. And I remember, I'm sorry, but I've spoken so much about Darrell. But Darrell had such a great prayer that day, and he just had everyone hold hands and say, we're a team, we're a family, we're going to get through this together. Even though there were competitors, you find that in the NASCAR world, if someone was down and out or needed help or needed a jet or whatever, and I even had experienced that myself a time or two, everybody would come together and unite and be there for each other. And that's what's going to happen at Charlotte this weekend. Kyle will be on everybody's mind, but at the same time, knowing Kyle, it's sort of cliche-ish, but he'd say, "What are you doing? Let's get on with this. This is what we need to do." And I just know the racer in him would have said, "Let's get on with it." But I know the fans will unite, and they'll be there together, and they'll be thinking about Kyle and his family, and it'll be like a family reunion. I think, in my opinion, because racers they unite, and they love their sport, they love their drivers, and they love their teams, and they'll remember Kyle in a good way. It'll be sad, but in a good way, and and all the service members too. That's another part of it as well. Big part that they're there to honor everyone on Memorial Day. So it's a combination of remembering Kyle and all of those that have served our country and served it well. That's what I think will happen.
Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a tight schedule. I know it's Coca-Cola 600 weekend. It's not the way any of us were anticipating it to be, but appreciate your insights. You gave so many great answers. And yeah, I didn't even think about Kyle's connection to Darrell Waltrip, but I think you said it pretty well there with how both of their careers kind of went with their aggressiveness and all that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and I hope to see you out on the track this weekend.
You're very welcome, and I'm honored that you asked, and I really appreciate talking with all of you, and hope you all have a very nice weekend. Thank you.